Your alternative talk radio contact, The Planet, KGRAradio.com.
With infinite complacency, people went to and fro over the earth about their little affairs, serene in the assurance of their dominion over this small, spinning fragment of solar driftwood, which by chance or design man has inherited out of the dark mystery of time and space.
I appreciate you it was kind of a last minute thing.
Yeah, that's no problem. Yeah, I just know when it's time to contact somebody, and I just had this feeling to do it. And then you said you needed one for Thursday, so. Yeah, exactly. That's really interesting. I just had this strong feeling to look your show up, and then you said you need it for Thursday, so that's synced up.
Yeah, and just so people know, here we are sitting on a Tuesday recording for Thursday, so that's how that worked out. And we've actually never spoken before, so that was very fortuitous. So very interesting. So you describe yourself as a medium, a psychic, and a remote viewer. And to me, it seems like if you wanted to be busy doing any or all of these things, that you would be. And just from a cursory glance at some of your pages, it seems like you do work in these fields and you do practice them.
Yeah, and all these, I've done work in all of these different fields. At first, I was a medium and just spoke to ghosts and spirits, or what I perceived to only be ghosts and spirits. But it actually goes clear back to when I was 5 years old and saw, I had a dream of beings coming to me through the ethers to try to speak to me. It was on the L tracks behind the house that we lived in Chicago. And that's when I first started getting beings speaking to me. It could have been earlier, but I don't remember. And then I saw the ghost of my grandfather in my room. And then further on, I just started talking to ghosts that would come to me for assistance to get to the other side. And then it started really going more into the alien realms, like when my guide Simeon appeared to us to communicate with us. And he's been around since I was little as well. And then after my car accident in 2009, when I had my near-death experience, where I went to the other side and conversed with the guides and came back, I came back with even more heightened abilities, or it sparked a certain heightened ability. And I came back, and it was fuzzy at first, but then I started to see into people's energy cores and see if they had attachments wrapped around them or choking them, or if they said they had a pain somewhere, it could be an implant or a site where some aliens were screwing around somewhere else, with tools. I could see if somebody had been abducted by aliens by seeing the tools on them in some fashion, or I saw if they were messed with. Like I could see, everybody's energy has a record. Mm-hmm. And I could see if other hands were touching them, either other human hands or alien hands. So if the person said they didn't know they had a surgery done, I knew they were abducted and their mind erased, because I could see that if an alien hand touched them and put an implant in, or if other humans were doing alien bidding or anything like that, and I was able to actually help the person. If they also had depression too, that usually was caused by some demonic entity that was nearby. I have done things like that. Some people call them exorcisms, but I don't get so dramatic with it. I just reach in with my light body self, reach in and grab this thing by the neck or whatever it looks like and throw it out into the sunlight where guides take care of it. Or I'll transmute the energy into something nature-like, or ask that nature absorb it in some fashion. And that's how, when I remove those from people. Now, I do like remote viewing or bilocating when I do that, because most of my clients are on the phone or Skype or Zoom.
So that's by location, you said.
Yes, by location. That's another word for like astral projection or something along those lines. By locating, but I'm in between state. The reason I call it by locating is I'm grounded here where I'm sitting. And when I bilocate to an area, it's a form of astral projection, but I have a cord that is between my light body self and my human self.
Is there any danger of that cord being disconnected somehow?
Oh, yes. I learned that one the hard way, where what's known as your light body self or your spirit self can be grabbed by aliens or other demonic entities. I didn't think it could be damaged until I came across entities that could throw me around like a rag doll. So I had to reassert how I approached some of these situations when I found that out, where there are different alien races that can actually steal soul and spirit energies. So I found out they were actually doing this to a lot of people when I went to discover that what I call my sight self, light body self, or spirit self had been taken from one of my bilocating sessions. And I thought something was wrong, and I knew something was missing. So I went and looked and found that, but I found dozens of other people that these aliens had done it to. And when I bilocated again in there using, just basically my mental capacity, went in there and freed that part of myself, I was able to return these energy shards or these energy pieces to the people that they had been stolen from just releasing mine. I was able to get in there and get the rest of them. But so a lot of these aliens work dimensionally or telepathically. So I didn't realize until that had happened to myself that was even possible to take place. I thought I was impervious in that form, but it can actually be tracked technologically by different alien species.
Now, before we get any further, just so that people can hop on their phones or on their computer and look you guys up, on Facebook, you are Christopher S. Jacobs. And then is there any other social media outlets that they can look you up on?
Oh, yes, on YouTube. If anybody gets on YouTube, they can put my name, Christopher S. Jacobs, in the search bar, and my picture in YouTube will come up, where our radio that showed the lifting, my significant other, Joanna, and I recorded a radio show with my mother called The Lifting. The recordings of that are on there, along with other shows I've been on, such as the Galactic Interstellar Council and various other recordings that I've done. And if people want to reach us on our website, it's thelifting2017.wixsite.com/thelifting.
Excellent. Thanks, Chris. Thanks for doing that. So, wow, that's a lot that you just threw out there. Very interesting. So this all started at the age of 5 in Chicago. What did this being look like? Oh,
yeah, the very first one. I'm sorry if I moved too quickly.
No, that's okay. No, I was making notes. That way we have a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, I tend to move quickly like that in my sessions. So some people get confused if I move too quickly like that, so I always warn them usually ahead of time. But in Chicago, when I was little, I had this dream where I was an adult self, like I am now, roughly around the age that I am now. And went in through the backyard and saw these beings sitting on the L tracks that had come down from another dimensional layer. And one of them, that was a woman, pointed out that I was there, basically said, "Oh, he's here," And these other beings were just looking at me, and I know now I was being given a download of information. At that time, I just happened to see these beings in there in that astral setting. But underneath the porch of the house at the time, in that layer that I found myself in that dream state, or what I thought was a dream state, but I was really projecting to the backyard as more of an adult self, and I was being shown some of the things that I was going to do later on in life. And underneath the porch, there was a very dark being in shadow, like it was in a black coat that was underneath the porch. What I was being shown at the time was there was a being on the property, like a demonic entity, but I was also being shown that I was going to be taking care of some of those things later in life. I would learn how to get rid of them. in other people's houses and situations, and learn more about what these beings did, how they affected people, what energies they fed on, what they caused people to do in their lives. It's a extremely complex subject, even in the demon area, because there's so many different beings that people consider demons. They could range from Draco reptilians to disembodied energy ghoul-like entities that some people call them ghouls, but they're a form of a gray that's disembodied. And then you have all these other beings like jinn and all that cause problems in people's homes as well.
So those beings on the railroad tracks, they were expecting you, right? Which is very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, here he is.
Yeah, yes, they were very expecting. Yeah, they were expecting me. Yes.
Now, if your parents were outside with you or your neighbor, would you have been the only one that would have been able to see these things?
At that time, yes, but in the new energy now, if it had happened now, I think there would have been more people that would have seen this, because more people have woken up in the newer energies in the past 30 years or so. So I believe then, no, I don't think anybody or virtually anybody would have seen them. But if it had happened in this modern time, yeah, they would have.
Oh, that's interesting. So you think in the last 30 years or so, people have maybe tapped into these abilities more. Do you think that's because of movies and TV and just being aware of things?
Yeah, I believe there are good beings out there that have helped people trigger these things as well through these movies and through television. There's been bad people that have put things in there as well, but both sides have disclosure in the media. There's the good and the bad. But I believe that there are good people inserting things in there to trigger people's memories, whether they've been abducted, whether they were in like the secret space program, my labs, any of those things. There are good people out there that are trying to trigger these things for people, so people start to come more into their own power.
Now, when did you realize that, that you were different, that you could actually see things and feel things that others couldn't?
Well, I'd have to say, that when I was 5 years old, yes, but when I was more cognizant of it, I would have to say I was a teenager. When I would see beings walking into my room when we were in Nebraska, I would see beings walking out into the yard, different types of beings, not just ghosts. I would see different like elemental beings climbing up in the trees, and seeing ghost animals, or what I perceived to be as ghost animals, which were actually protector spirits. But I would have to say around between 13 and 16.
Okay. And what about your family then? Does your family have these types of gifts and abilities as well?
Oh, yes. My mother does. She's done this kind of work for many years, long before I started. She was into the stones and into the crystals and into numerology, and she does readings herself. And she was into it long before it got my interest in it. Back when I was a teenager, even though I had stuff happening, she got my interest more into the New Age stuff, and stuff like that. And eventually, I took on a life of its own for me as time went on.
So, when you were 5 or so, were you talking to your mom about these things that you were seeing?
Yeah, she said I mentioned several things, like I would see things in the house and point them out, and mention them to her. Like when my grandfather was in my room, I said Grandpa was in the room. I pointed things out, and my mother would claim I did things even earlier as a baby. Where I was even talking as an infant, or I would be speaking to beings that would come in the room. So my first memory of it is 5.
Right.
But she says I did it even earlier.
So, I recently received my first battle box. What is a battle box, you ask? Well, it's an adventure seeker's, survivalist's, and outdoor enthusiast's dream. My first box alone has started me well on the path to being fully prepared for an all-out zombie apocalypse situation. Or fine. At the very least, some truly badass extra hiking and camping gear. I've got knives, a saw, flashlights, flints, walkie-talkies, MREs, and even quick bleed stop spray. They obviously knew somehow what a klutz I am. Each item of your battle box has been hand-selected by survival experts for you to carry, use, or add to your emergency stash. You get a new battle box at your door every month, chock full of mystery adventure gear. They've shipped over 500,000 boxes, and they won Best Men's Subscription Box 2017. Go to trybattlebox.com/fray and pick the box you want. They start at just $25 per month. Right now, our listeners get a free tactical knife when you sign up for your first battle box at trybattlebox.com/fray. That's trybattlebox.com/fray. So remember, get that first battle box delivered to your door, plus a free tactical knife at trybattlebox.com/fray. So you only saw your grandfather the one time?
No, I actually saw him repeatedly throughout my life, even up until recently, where, if I did certain clearings or went into certain areas to help people cleanse their own energy or remove demons or something, every now and again he shows up as the guide for that particular session. He does show up still, even now.
So am I right in assuming that this is likely your mother's father, not your father's father?
I've seen my father's father as well, but no, the one I'm referring to is my mother's father.
Yeah, so it does seem that vein of thinking is true then, that it does just run in the bloodlines, straight down.
Mm-hmm. Yes, yeah. Even though he wasn't originally part of the bloodline, he brought in an energy to it, I believe.
Right.
Yeah, and he also had military. He was in the Navy, I believe, and also OSS back during World War II and everything. So he had connections in that area as well. I believe that carried over with some of the alien activity to us as well. So I believe some of the observance and some of the things that have been happening to us that are Cabal related are stretches back to that time. And my father's father was also in World War II, but my mother's father was more involved in the alien side of things.
Okay, so the alien side of things, you mentioned Simeon. Can you describe more about him? You called him your alien guide, right?
Yeah, I found out that actually he's more of a cousin race to us. He's of a society in the Pleiades that are more Native American, and they are the ancestral people of what we would regard as the Native American tribes. And they are ancient Mayan or any of those particular people that also inhabited Lemuria as well. So he's been my guide since the very beginning. He guided my mother as well for most of the time as well when we lived in Nebraska. And I came to find out, him and his people come from the Pleiades, and there are a multitude of other races that come from there as well that I've interacted with. So he said, basically any of the native tribes that exist in North America and Polynesia have their descended from the Pleiades in some way or fashion. And we would consider his people to be ETs, but they're more like us. I've actually seen this particular race with my own eyes. There were several races we've seen, in person. And they pretty much are just Native American Indians or Mayan looking or Mesoamerican looking, and they wouldn't freak anybody out at all if they were to show up. You could have walked past one of them on the street and never known it. And they have special equipment on them that allows them to be in our density. They're a slightly higher density or vibration than us. So in order to walk around with us, they wear jewelry. Like you'll see them wear something that's very Native American, like turquoise ring, for instance, or something silver, or some kind of jewelry like a necklace or something like that. And that usually is one of them wearing something to protect against not only our density to them, but theirs to us, since they're a higher vibration.
Chris, the way you talk about this stuff, it's pretty amazing. I mean, it really just sounds like you just know these things. You've seen these things. I don't know what I would think if I even saw a quarter of these things that you've experienced in your lifetime. It's really it's a lot. It's a lot to process. Okay, so Simeon, What exactly does he look like? What are his mannerisms like? And how long does he pop in and out of, in your home, or do you just run into him on the street?
Actually, yeah, I'll see him transparently, and this is how it is with a lot of the guides. I'll see them transparently. Since this is with my eyes. It's not just with my third eye. I see this with my eyes, and I speak to them telepathically. I can hear them in my head. So when he shows up, he mostly wears a jumpsuit, like a one-piece blue jumpsuit, kind of like a darker blue color. Sometimes he wears a sash. Him and his brother wear sashes. Sometimes that look Native American looking, have like different patterns, native patterns and stuff on them. And they both have dark black hair, like you'd think from a Native American, that really slick dark black hair. And they have like an olive tone type of skin, like the natives do. And I'd have to say with Simeon, if he were standing right next to me, I'd have to say he was fairly tall. He's almost 7 feet tall from what I've seen. Sometimes I see him as 8 feet, but that's also sometimes a frequency vibrational difference too. Sometimes I'll see beings shorter or taller given the connection I have to them at the time as well. But he looks just like a Native American man that you would see now. It's just that him and his brother look like they would be in their late 20s, early 30s is how they look. And I see him. I don't see him and his brother too often anymore. When I got past a certain level in my own understandings and own inner work that I had to deal with, I saw Simeon and his brother less and less, and other guides started to come in to teach me other things, other ideas and other principles, and help me gain a better understanding of certain things. See, certain guides are there for as long as a certain lesson is needed, but there's usually one, like Simeon, that are usually always around, but they're not always visible to you. And it just so happens I can see them. Some of these galactics aren't used to the fact that a human can see them, and some of them get kind of freaked by it as well. They're afraid that other humans that aren't as educated or something are gonna come after them or something like that. But yeah, with Simeon, if he walked up to you now, he looks completely human, except also his eyes are slightly larger as well. There would be virtually no difference between us and his people.
So what about physical needs of a being like Simeon? Do they have to eat? Do they have to sleep? Is that a normal part of their lives?
Yes, they're physical beings themselves. They're just in a different vibrational state. They do have to sleep and eat. It's just far less than we do. We from their perspective, we're almost gluttons because we eat far more than they do. They can survive off very little, and they could. Sleep-wise, they probably only need a few hours sleep, where we need 8 or 9 to really recoup from something. Sometimes it's a little more for them if they run into something pretty ugly energetically. But day to day, I found out with Simeon and his brother, they sleep very little, and they're mostly doing their work to help guide. They can even do that in their sleep. They can even telepathically speak to people in their sleep, and they wouldn't be exerting any energy.
Wow. Yeah, that sounds like a pretty powerful being, right?
Oh, yeah, he's pretty high up.
This might sound like a really stupid question, but I find it fascinating. Do you happen to know what they eat?
I see them as eating pretty much the same as us. It's just they have replication systems in their technology. They don't hunt, from what I can see anymore. Other races will replicate meat. Other races out there don't eat meat. It depends who you run into and what their beliefs are, and how their technological infrastructure is set up. But with the ancient Mayan / native Pleiadians that are out there, they usually replicate all of their food, from what I can understand. But they still do farm. They have some planets out in their system that they still do farm. They have trees and herbs and all that other stuff that grow out there as well. So,
and I know you already kind of probably labeled it, but I wanted to delve into it a little bit more. You said they were your guides, and you have seen them less because it sounds like you have achieved a certain level that they want you to get to. But are they just assigned to you and your mother and maybe let's just say your family, or are they guiding other people?
would tell me he was guiding plenty of other people. That's also another reason I don't see him and his brother too often. They do guide other people. Like his brother is a guide to a friend of ours who lives in Japan. So he also told me Running Horse is his name. He told me that he guides several people almost in tandem, where he will go to several people. Michael is definitely the same way. I'm talking about the being people know as Archangel Michael. We speak to Michael. He hates the term Archangel, actually. So I just did that for a reference. But he guides thousands of different people, basically in tandem, back and forth all over the place. So with Simeon, yeah, he says he's my main guide, but he's also a guide, or galactic friend or ally to several other people.
So you've spoken to this other person that he's guiding in Japan?
Yes, his brother. Yeah, we speak with her quite often. Actually, it's our friends Annie and Shin that are out in not Australia, but they live in Australia sometimes. Japan. We're going to Japan this spring to actually go do seminars with them out there. And her guide, Running Horse, who is Simeon's brother, pretty much guides her, along with several other galactics and guides.
I mean, comparing notes, probably, that you've done so far, do they look the same to them as they do to you?
Yes, she described Running Horse and Simeon exactly how they looked, and described how their voices sounded and everything. She could hear them as well. So that's how I knew when I was talking to Running Horse. I didn't know Running Horse was Simeon's brother. And he started talking, and Simeon showed up and stood right next to him. It's like, and you guys look very similar to each other. You guys are family. And he goes, yeah, we're blood brothers. And I didn't know that at the time. And that's how they connected us with Annie and her husband. Is her guide, Running Horse, came to Simeon, and they kind of did some co-oping in the background and basically set that whole synchronicity up to where we would meet.
So are they coming here and teaching all of you guys that actually have these kinds of abilities to help along the human race as a whole?
Yes, they can't directly physically interfere. It would be a violation of their rules, but they can actually steer people in a right direction, but they can't forcibly do it. The good guys don't forcibly do it. That would only be the bad guys that would do that. But at the same time, they're fighting a war with these bad guys to try to keep them away from us, or at least what I call the evil overage, or darkness overage out there. There's still a fair amount of lesson that we came in to go through here. But what's on top of that, these galactics physically keep away from us for the most part. But yeah, these beings of all different kinds have come in not only to teach us, but to learn from us at the same time. I came to find out there are a lot of people incarnated here that are members of those particular societies, and they wanted people stuck here in the illusion to not only help people around them here, but to also have a stake in what takes place here, since those beings couldn't just come down here and say, hey, we're from this place and we're going to do this and this and this. It wouldn't be received well. But if they sent an incarnated version of one of their people to be born as a human or be inserted in the human society, they could change things energetically here, and at the same time, change things energetically for that species that's trying to obtain either a certain ability or a certain understanding that they don't know. So some people think, oh, the guides are omnipotent. No, they're learning at the same time we are.
So what about the bad ones? What do they look like? Where are they from? And what exactly makes them bad?
Well, there are actually more than a few species out there that are dark. The main ones people have heard about, of course, are the Greys. That would be the dark Anunnaki, the frail little creatures that people call the Greys. Most of the ones people see as the Greys are robots anymore, but the original ones were these beings that ripped through from a parallel universe, came through and decided to conquer the most of creation at that about 1 million to 500,000 years ago, and they decided to break into our reality. But then there's those are the spindly Greys, or Archon type forces. People see them as they are completely hinged to the hip with artificial intelligence. That is the main bad guy that exists today, is AI. And you have another species that's hinged at the hip to AI, which would be the Draco reptilians. People see them as like the top dog. In fact, they're the servants to the spindlies, and the spindlies and them are the servants to the AI. You have the bug type races, a mixture of bug races, some good, some evil. You have the mantid ones, which a majority of the time I have not found too many good mantid races that actually don't abduct people and don't put implants in people's heads and stuff like that. I find that all over the place. There are also another species of gray that are part lizard, part bug. They have this green texturing to them, have these yellowy lime green eyes. They're pretty creepy. And then you have some of these other demon forms like the jinn. Other ones I call ghouls or mimicker demons. They look like a black sheep with a face, pretty much. The Draco have several different looks. The classic demon look that had orange and red with the horns, like people think, hellish-looking demon. There's those. There are raptor-looking ones that look like their head looks like a velociraptor, but they have the body of a man. You have crocodilian ones that have the body of a man, but head like a crocodile, like in the ancient Egyptian pictures. You have ones that look like that. Yeah, and you have a hair-covered one that people know of as the Yeti. It's not an ape-like creature. It's actually a white reptilian covered in white hair. And people don't know that that's a reptilian. Then you have the really huge 15-foot tall ones with wings that are just completely snow white color that look like crocodile in the face. Those are considered the royalty type ones. They're called the white royals, and they're some of the most fearsome ones you'll run across. But there's a stage above those that are called the alpha draconis, and they're hyper intelligent, elongated skulled reptilians that look like the ancient Sumerian statues you see of the Draco reptilians. Those guys are hyper intelligent, and they are very difficult to get rid of once you got one around your property. They think they're 10 steps ahead of you all the time. There are ways of getting rid of them. You just have to stand 10 steps ahead of them. And those are some of the different Draco types. There's shorter, hairy ones too that are about 2 feet high that people mistake for gnomes and stuff like that, but they're actually Draco. And all of these different breeds of these were created by the Dark Anunnaki, which would be like the original beings with elongated skulls. Those were the beings that came in from the parallel universe to begin with and degenerated into the gray form. We call them shaped chickens, where they look like they're just degenerated. And they started out looking more like us at one point. There's a multitude of different bad guys. I even discovered one today I didn't even know about while reading somebody in London. There was a type of water sprite this guy had on his property. And I thought it was going to be a good elemental, but it felt heavy. And these beings were nasty. I bilocated into that area, and it was a flowing brook. And these beings did not want me there. They were very belligerent, and I had guides help me remove them. But they hated humans, and I didn't even realize they existed until this morning when this person was saying, "I think there's something nasty over in the waterway. Can you check?" And said his girlfriend. Said there was something was a water sprite over there. They thought there was just one thing. There was like 7 of them in the water that I had to take care of, and they were blue. They looked like blue infants with fins. Is what they looked like. Oh, goodness me! They were a type of fish. Yeah, they were pretty creepy. They had shark-like teeth and everything. I'm thinking, oh God, you guys are creepy. Get me out of here, sort of thing. Sometimes I'll bilocate into an area. And I'll bilocate into an area. I don't know what the thing's going to look like, and the thing's probably something out of a nightmare.
No kidding. So, just to pause for a second, the client just knew that something was going on. Like, he had a bad feeling, he contacts you. Now, he probably, luckily, cannot see what these look like. It takes getting you on the phone and you by locating to the location, and then you're like, oh boy, this is not good for anybody.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know in reads what I'm going to run into. I never know what I'm going to run into until I run into it. Most of the time, it's Draco reptilians. I find I can get rid of them pretty quickly. With demons, like mimicker demons, I can get rid of them pretty quickly. But with this, I had to have guides come in and remove them. These things couldn't hurt my light body self. They tried, but they couldn't do anything. They were on a strange vibration. But he contacted me and said other things were going wrong around his property. He had some bad feelings there, but his girlfriend suggested to me that there might be a WaterSprite or something in the water. Please go look. It's been kind of driving us nuts. And I looked, and I see these 7 little, like, baby infant-looking creatures sitting in the water that are just staring at me. And they couldn't do anything, but then I had the guides remove it, and they said, thank you. We needed somebody to point these out because the guides that were on site couldn't see them. They could feel them, but they couldn't connect to them. It took somebody in my density and my vibration to bilocate, connect to them so they could see them and basically capture them and get them away from humans. So that's another thing people don't know. The guides don't see everything that's around. They might feel it, but they can't capture what they can't touch. But if you create a quantum thread between yourself and whatever this is, the guides can come in there and grab it.
Why take a chance on that burglar not skipping your home? Studies show that security systems deter burglars. So, have the ability to leave for the day, go on vacation, and go to sleep at night knowing your home and family are safe. Simply Safe is ridiculously smart. Its sensors will protect every point of access to your home. Doors, windows, garage, you name it. Simply Safe's 24/7 monitoring is just $14.99 a month, and they never lock you into a contract. More than 3 million people, including myself, already know it feels good to fear less with Simply Safe. So go with the only home security I trust, Simply Safe, by going to simplysafe.com/fray today. That's simplysafe.com/fray for the home security I trust. simplysafe.com/fray. Now, what about, Chris, something like the FRAY? Because that's another thing that, you say the FRAY, and then there's a whole list of different ones. There's tall ones and short ones, like little gnomes. They're hideous, they're beautiful. It runs the gamut. So what about something like the FRAY? Is that under this same umbrella as well?
The FRAY ride the fence. Sometimes I found good ones and bad ones. I find all manner of FRAY and fairy folk. Some are nice, some want to just harass you. And some are very mad that people have done things to the environment, like those little sprite creatures. They were very angry that humans were even in existence because of what humans have done to the environment. They were very angry about that. But some beings will just move, like certain fae folk that live in trees that I've seen will actually, if a tree gets cut down, they'll move to another set of trees. Some try to go with the flow. Some try to stop humans from cutting trees down. Some will scare them to get them out of an area. Sasquatch falls into that category. The basically almost like an elemental category. I interact with them on a regular basis. They definitely fall into that category. Now, the Fae in general, several times that I've seen, I one time was looking up in a tree where all these Fae were huddled in it, and I can see them in their wavelength. They were trying to make themselves look like the branches of the tree. They were trying to blend with the tree. And I asked one of them to approach me one time, and it looked like this being looked like a tree. It looked like a dwarf that was made of branches. And approached me, and they said they were considered to be, we would name them, and they were considered to be a type of Fae. There were other ones with wings that I saw would hang out in trees. They looked almost like a fairy, but with a larger, elongated head. that had kind of like a dragonfly-esque feel to them. And there are these other ones that bite and scratch people too. They're like little gremlins. I've run into those. Those guys are annoying when you run into them because they like to bite and scratch. But then there are fairies, these female entities that are interdimensionally based. There are several kinds of them as well. There are these. Most of them I've run into can change sizes, like from like a little like orbital type form to a full grown person. Mm-hmm. I've run into some of these that some of them are like nymph-like, where they specialize, say, in a sexual area, or they specialize in an environmental area, or what have you. You know, I've run into at least a dozen different types of fae folk. And then you have leprechauns and gnomes. Now, leprechauns, I've run into some very interesting ones of them. They just look like short people, like short humans. And I've communicated with them before. They said they govern different territories across the planet that we don't see. They live in hidden areas that are out of our visual perception wavelength. The gnomes are the same way, where they were out of they're out of our visual wavelength, but they do affect us. And there are other different races. There's one I ran into called the Grimpa. They're a particular race in history that's kind of got a bad rap in Irish and Celtic mythology for being temperamental, when it was only a pocket of them that were actually causing problems then. And some of them, what's funny about gnomes and Grimpa is, this is a funny story, that when I went out to spend time with Joanna in North Carolina, she can sense. She doesn't always see things, but she can sense when something's around her when she's being watched. And she was in the shower and she yelled to me and said, "Hey, Chris, I feel there's something in the room. Can you come look?" I'm thinking, okay. I walk in there, and bear in mind, I can see these beings when they show up. There was at least 20 gnomes crammed into the bedroom. And normally somebody wouldn't see this. They would just feel it like she did. They would feel like maybe something's a little off, but they would think maybe ghost activity or something. But they're all pointed towards the bathroom. And I'm thinking, okay, guys, what are you doing in here? Mm-hmm. And they're very childlike. It was because somebody was in the shower. And I'm thinking, you guys are little perverts. Get out of the house, you know? And they do this. They will do this. I know this will creep people up, but gnomes and Grimpa and some of these fae will do this. So if people think they're being watched in the shower, chances are it's one of these beings that's doing this.
Or 20 of them.
I came to find out. Or 20 of them. Yeah, that's unreal. That's unreal for that to happen. It's just that we were near an area where some gnomes were conglomerating, and they originally came in to talk, and then, of course, you know, they just hung around when somebody was in the shower. And I just thought that was really weird. I had never seen that except in somebody's session once before, where they thought there was a ghost in the basement watching them as they showered. I was like, no, it's just a little elemental who's a pervert. So I found that out.
Little things. They just can't help themselves.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah, it's weird. I never thought in a million years I'd run into that or report that. But it's funny because they're very much like us in that area, but they have a childlike, you know, wondrous sense to them. But then they do stuff like that. Then you have some ones that have an attitude problem, sometimes that steal your stuff too. So you like coins, jewelry, stones, electronics, keys.
So a lot of times then when people might think that they have a haunting going on or a poltergeist situation, it's not that at all.
No, sometimes it's an elemental. I'm glad this was brought up because I made this mistake once when I was clearing a house. And this was the first time I ever ran into the Grimpa. If you want to know what the Grimpa look like, they look like Gizmo from the Gremlins movies. Mm-hmm. They look like a stuffed animal is basically what they look like. And so especially the children ones. But I went into this house. Somebody wanted me to sage a house and clear it out one time. And I did, and I ran into this being. I had no clue what it was. I just saw it had an attitude problem a mile wide. And I said, what are you? You're very dense in energy, and you're very pissed off. And he's like, "Oh, F you humans," stuff like that. I'm thinking, okay, fine, I'm going to get you out of here. Well, I cleared the house, and then I came to find out several months later, as I was learning about elementals, that he was an elemental that lived on that land, and humans had built the houses in the city around where these beings lived, and they were rather annoyed by that. They had to put up with people. That group had never encountered somebody that could actually remove them. So they were a little perturbed, but I managed to calm them down as I formed a relationship with them. And some of these pockets of elementals are annoyed with people like that, and will cause problems in the house. And people come to me and say, "I think I got a ghost in here." 9 times out of 10, it's a grandpa, gnome, or some other elemental being like a fae. It's not always a ghost like people think it is.
Wow, that's a much higher percentage than I would have thought. So what about when you go out to these locations, either in person or by locate? I mean, how often do things attach to you then, or to Joanna or your mother?
It used to be every single time I did a session, something would harass us afterwards. The first couple of years or so I was doing sessions, they would trace back to me, and we would get harassed mercilessly, telepathically. Being would end up in our house and scratch us and do stuff like that, but and cause horrible feelings, fights, stuff like that. But until I figured out how to clip these quantum threads that these beings could trace back, we would always get harassed. Now I'm a little more proficient at it, and it only happens once in every now and again. But it used to be all the time when we would do sessions. Wow. that we would get the attention of these negative beings, and they would just trace us back to where we were. Sometimes the guides would take care of them. Sometimes the guides left them in place, so we would learn how to block them better. That's why these bad things happen on occasion to people, is the guides are trying to teach them how to protect themselves against them. And if we hadn't been harassed, we wouldn't have figured it out in the first place. So these beings tend to, if you keep yourself unprotected, they will trace back the wake from when you've bilocated to a site, or your energy from if you were physically on a site, and trace it kind of like a breadcrumb trail back to where you are at the moment. Like if, say I'm reading somebody in England, let's say, and say there was a demon on the property and I got rid of that, but say I didn't clear out any other beings that were there or other parts of that area. Some of them could sniff around on an energy level and say, "Hey, let's follow this cord back and see where it goes," and then they end up in my bedroom. So you have to be very, very careful. They can trace through electronics too, like computers, phones, televisions. So people have to be very careful what they're delving into, or when they're bilocating or astral projecting, because the ether is full of predators that people don't know about. It's like going into an ocean full of sharks and you're the bait or chum, pretty much. So you have to be careful what you're allowing back into your circle, who you're allowing in your circle, and where you're bilocating to.
Yeah, that's a good PSA. Don't become the human chum for all of these things that are floating around out there. Can we zip back to Sasquatch for a minute here? Now, sure. You said that they are an elemental. Does that mean all of them? Like all of them that are being seen all over the world, basically? Let's just blanket statement it all. All of them are elementals?
I don't believe it's quite all of them. There are some races that are negative that people are seeing as well. There's a type of troll that some of the native tribes call face eaters. I've run into them before. I don't believe they fall under that category. They maybe once did a long time ago, but they've changed.
They look like a Sasquatch, though. Yeah,
they do look like a Sasquatch, but they're bigger. They're more like the Draco reptilians than they are like the Sasquatch. They act more like the Draco reptilian. Then you have the Yeti, which is a Draco reptilian, but the rest of them, from what I can see, are an elemental-based race. And they would argue that would be more of a label. They see themselves as just being in the moment. They don't see themselves as elemental. But if you wanted to classify the Sasquatch people, into like a category. They would be more elemental than humans would be, because humans live in the cities. But yeah, I communicate with the Sasquatch people on a regular basis, telepathically. Very kind people, a very very loving people. At least a good majority of them are. There are some out there, some tribes of them out there that are quite belligerent, or some teenage ones, or adolescent or child ones that, or especially the adolescent ones that tend to get into trouble like our human teenagers do. They're very similar, and they will be belligerent. But then you have some that don't like humans for screwing up the environment. Like, yet again, there's another race that some of them don't like humans. But then you have the imposters that impersonate encounters of Sasquatch as well, different negative Fey types and everything. But the Sasquatch, like I said, they gave us a report not too long ago, since we're going to be going up to the state of Washington fairly soon in the next couple of months, that be careful. There are negative Sasquatch that live up there, that certain clans don't mesh with people very well. And so they were basically warning us about that. So yeah, it runs the gambit with Sasquatch. So
I'm sure you're familiar with missing 411, David Paulides, people going missing in forests and national parks, right? So is that safe to say that maybe some of those cases could be some of these more negative Sasquatch type entities?
Yeah, like the face eaters and trolls. Some of them are actually doing the bidding of some of these more negative aliens that want to either energy farm or genetic farm people or enslave people in some fashion. That's where some of these missing people go. But a majority of them, from what I've seen, are taken by reptilian forces versus Sasquatch. But if there is a Sasquatch type being that, say, David Paulides is seeing or doing research about, it's more than likely like one of these negative troll types that's doing it. Or from what the Sasquatch people have been transmitting to us, sometimes there's false information where our scientific communities are in, or our investigators will follow, and it leads back to Sasquatch. So you've got the disinformation that's being thrown in there as well.
Have you guys ever seen the Predator type videos of things in the forest that it looks just like the movie The Predator, where it kind of looks like it's clear, but you can see a definite form of something? And I've seen a few videos out there of this type of a thing. So, I mean, is that tied into the Sasquatch beings or people at all, or is that just a separate elemental type being that's actually being captured on video?
Actually, it's both. The Sasquatch, some of the more advanced quantumly based ones, can actually do that. It's called the molecular cellular solid ability, where they can transmute matter and energy. They claim humans have the same ability, and some of these other galactics have that ability as well, where it's like the transporter on Star Trek, where you go from matter, energy, matter.
Are you going to get to that point, Chris, and just turn invisible one day? I mean, it seems like you have so much knowledge on this stuff, right? Like, and since you don't see Simeon and what was it, Running Horse so much anymore, maybe you're getting your vibration high enough to where you could just go invisible and walk around and not have people really truly see you. I mean, could that happen?
They said certain. Oh yeah, it's very possible things like that could happen. I was told that there's been some misconceptions about certain abilities like that too, where some of it is genetic as well. Some of it is what is inherited and what is gained into our genetic memory, whether we convert from a carbon-based life form to a crystalline-based life form as well. Yeah. That's inherent to that as well. Do I believe it's possible for me to convert from a carbon-based to a crystalline-based? Oh, yes. I'm not, egocentric to think right now I can accomplish that, but yeah, I do believe it's possible for me to do that. And then the forest people have shown me that anybody can actually accomplish these particular abilities.
So since you say you've talked to them telepathically, do they think that human beings are goofballs because we're running around the forest and we're setting up trail cams, and some people have traps, or, some people are out there actively hunting one of these to bring it in and prove it to science? So do they think we're all just a bunch of goofballs?
They know we have enlightened people amongst us, and they know we have idiots amongst us as well. But they do laugh at people sometimes. Like they'll make noises in the forest, and nobody's going to see them because from our eyes, they're invisible. They're in a different frequency, but they can project that sound to where they can go whoo in the forest, and we're following a sound trail. We could walk right past them, and never know it, and they're sitting there laughing at us. They'll put up trail cams. The only time you ever see a Sasquatch on a trail cam or a camera or anything like that is if it's an adolescent one or a younger one. The third type would be an adult one is wanting you to know it's there. They're trying to get people more familiar with their look and their presence, but they're also trying to avoid the people that are trying to hunt them too.
Yeah.
They're flesh and blood just like us, even though there's the more advanced ones that can do the molecular cellular solid stuff. There's some that are more like us that are at risk of being shot as well. And groups like the Cabal, for instance, actually are hunting down some of these cryptids so that we don't come in contact with them. They're trying to keep us completely in the dark. And these beings out there, like the Sasquatch, are going, hey, we're here, we exist, this is our life, this is our message. We want to be able to have a dialogue with our little brothers and sisters again. So you have all these factors in play.
So what about when you guys go up to Washington State and say you go into an area that has quite a number of these Sasquatch people? Since you guys are on a higher vibration, does that mean then that they can't hide as easily from you, that you actually would be able to see them when other people couldn't?
Yeah, I've run into that myself where some beings are actually very surprised that I see them. Like if they haven't been of the groups that we've been in telepathic contact with. If I walked up there right now, and some of them were in their different vibration. There are some that don't utilize that. Some that'll just walk around in the forest too. But if I went up there right now and saw a couple of the transparent Sasquatch, and then sent a telepathic message to them, they might get very, very surprised because they've never encountered me before. So yeah, I do suspect that something like that would happen. I know when Sasquatch is around. I know when they're in a different vibration, whether they're in a city or in the wilderness. Like I said, they aren't always as enthusiastic sometimes either. That I know this because some of them are afraid that me seeing them, that somehow maybe an enemy will see them and get led back to their colonies too. So some of them are very, very cautious.
Yeah, I could understand that. And I could understand like you walking up into Washington State somewhere and they're kind of giving their buddy the side eye like, look at this guy. He could see us. What is going on over here? Who's this guy think he is? I would love to hear an update after you go to Washington State. And maybe we can keep in touch and you can come back on for a little update as far as what might have gone on up there. So how many Sasquatch do you have an idea of how many there are, that are kind of interacting on some level with people? Or is it impossible to tell because they're always zipping in and out of our vibrational frequencies?
From what I understand, the ones that have appeared to people, and some people kind of dismiss it, well, others know exactly what they're looking at. There's thousands of them that are appearing to people. They're wanting to form a dialogue with humans again after a long period of time of not being able to. That the enemy out there has basically divided and conquered people for centuries, and the humans and Sasquatch have been were allies a long time ago, very powerful allies against some of these darker beings back a long time ago, before the world was divided up by these ancient bad guys. And they're wanting to reignite that dialogue again, but it's been very difficult because people have been scared of them.
Yeah.
The humans in this century don't know what they're looking at versus the ones from a long time ago. So it's proven to be slightly difficult. So they are very, very happy when they can come across somebody that they can converse with and give their messages to and help out. Now, there is a case very recently that was on the news not too long ago about a boy that was lost in the woods that said he was talking to a bear.
Yeah.
That was not a bear. That was actually a Sasquatch. I found out that was actually sheltering the child or saving him from other dangerous forces that were around. They will rescue children. So that's also some reasons why they are blamed for stealing children, is because they are actually stopping the forces that are stealing the children. So the bad guys tend to use their telepathic abilities to get other humans to point the finger at some of these kinder cryptids like Sasquatch, or else the Sasquatch would be communicating a lot more if it wasn't for this old enemy of theirs that's out there. So yeah, that case just screamed Sasquatch when I saw that on the news. The interesting bit of synchronicity is I didn't even know this had happened. And Joanna had this compulsion to, fiddle with television and start to download some of the news channels to the Roku TV we have. And all of a sudden, we flipped over to this one news channel, and they're talking about this boy who said he sat with a bear in the woods and talked to this bear person. And I'm looking at this instantly. I just got a flash of Sasquatch. Basically, on a telepathic level, they're like, "Yeah, we did it." At first, I asked him, like, "Wait a minute, did you guys actually do this, or was this another cryptid, or was this another being?" They're like, "No, it was us. It was one of our people." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah." They did a channeling very recently with us on one of our shows that we do on our YouTube channel, called The World of Sasquatch. We wanted to do more stuff on the Sasquatch at different times, the different sizes, shapes, the different abilities of all of these different Sasquatch. And so the second episode, which we haven't shown yet, is about this boy that was rescued by this being he thought was a giant bear.
So, okay, and I'm totally on board with that because that story was so strange. There were so many factors. You're going, how could that be a bear? How could that be a bear? How could that be a bear? But the question is, though, did it maybe make itself to where it looked more like what most people would consider a bear, and that's why he said bear? Or is it just the fact that he's a kid and he probably doesn't really have anything to compare it to? He doesn't really maybe know a Bigfoot.
I was thinking it was a little bit of both because he was fairly young, and there was this giant hairy creature comes out and shields him and sits with him. First thing a little kid's going to think is bear. But I was told that it was elements of the two, because some of these beings like to shapeshift into animal forms, and they'll actually. What's interestingly enough, in this area, we're in Prescott, Arizona at the moment, and in this area, every now and again, you'll see a deer walk through the complex, which isn't really, you would think it's not uncommon, but the demeanor at which the deer was walking, I could see looking side to side, looking ahead, just looking back and forth like it was a being patrolling the area. And I got to looking at this being's energy a little bit more, and I saw inside there was somebody in the energy field that was waving to me, and I found out that was a Sasquatch in another form that had shifted into that form so that it could walk through a semi-populated area to look for whatever that Sasquatch was looking for. So I see both of those with the little boy as plausible.
Interesting. So what if myself, and I know that everybody like deep down inherently has some of these abilities. Mine is like really buried down deep in there, Chris. I got to tell you, I think I'm about as sensitive as a rock. So what if I wanted to go out in the forest and, have one of these experiences with one of the Sasquatch people? Like, what would I need to do? What are the steps there?
Well, when you go out into the woods, make sure you're not in like an angry state. Make sure you're like in a more calm state, and basically say, put in your own thoughts, saying that you're talking to them through your heart space. Say that you're talking to them through that part of yourself, the kinder part of yourself. Put it out there, in your mind. That's what your intention is. And if they get back to you with a feeling, you'll feel this overwhelming, loving feeling. I've seen the most non-sensitive people go out and do this, and basically projecting loving intentions towards these beings, and they will get it back 100-fold in emotional feeling. They'll feel it just envelop them. So they feel all of that when you go out there. They feel every bit of emotion. This is also how they can stay away from hunters too. They can feel the negative intent and mostly stay away from them. But the intention you give when you're going there, that you're not just there to get a picture of them, you're there to form a relationship with them, friendship, loving, brotherhood type relationship with them. You will get their attention far more than if you were just there to get a picture. That if I could tell anybody anything, it's that. Now, if you go into an area, this involves discernment, and you go into an area and you get this kind of rotten feeling, like, or you're, something, feeling is telling you, hey, maybe I shouldn't go into this area. It doesn't feel right.
Mm-hmm.
It usually means stay away, that there could be other beings out there that the Sasquatch are trying to keep away from you or keep you away from them. They will send you little intuitive blurbs like that as well. But the biggest thing is the intention. Why are you there to talk to them? Is it just to get famous by taking a picture or getting them on film, or do you actually want to speak to them and form a relationship with our ancient cousins? That's a biggie to them. If you earn their trust, they will let you start snapping pictures, and they will even appear in a few of them. I've had that happen. We've gotten some images of both transparent and physically there Sasquatches that appear in photos after we've gotten home and we look at the pictures. Our Sasquatch friend Fuma here appeared in a photograph, and his brother Seymour appeared in one of them. But yeah, when you go out to the woods, it's all about intention.
This is probably a really stupid question, very random, extremely hypothetical, but what about a person that goes out into the woods, even if they're by themselves or maybe they're not, they're going out on hikes, so they take a handgun with them. Now, what if you went out into the woods, you do have your handgun and it is loaded, but you put out the intention and tell the Sasquatch people, this is only for other bad actual people in the woods or crazy folks, which, sometimes people do run into those in the woods. That's the most terrifying thing in the woods is other people sometimes. But what if you just say it's for a bear attack, a cougar attack? It's not for you. It's just for my protection from other things besides you. Would then, you be able to still build that relationship? Would they believe that? Or are they always just like, well, you're carrying a weapon, so you're out?
It depends on which groupings you run into as well. They are usually very abhorrent to guns. They usually hate guns with a passion. But if you put that intention out there strong of like, hey, this is not for you, this is not a trick, they will be able to tell if you're lying or not. So I've heard some people have asked me that same question, like, hey, I have to carry this in the woods. What if I run into a wildcat or something? Mm-hmm. And it's like, which is perfectly logical. That's necessary. You have to do that. But I told another person that asked me that, I said, it's about the intent. Is your intent to actually shoot one of them or defend yourself against some other creature that comes up on you? They will know the difference, but some groups might be a little more discordant with that and be creeped out by the fact that you have the gun on you. But then there are other groups, like the ones we know, Fuma and Seymour, who would know why you have that there. It just depends on, it's like with us, it depends on the individual, who gets creeped out by what. So I'd like to say they were all either for or against it, but it's actually a mixture. But the ones that you probably want to talk to are the ones that wouldn't mind so much if it was for the right intent.
See, but if they saw the news and that badass guy in Colorado who just killed the cat with his bare hands, they'd be like, you know what? I know you don't need that gun. It is possible to kill a wild cat that wants to kill you with only your hands. I can't believe you did that.
Yes, and
that
some
was
of them
insane.
think that way too.
I bet. I
know.
I
saw that.
That was nuts.
Some of the Sasquatch forest people do think that. They're like, some of them will go, you don't need it. We don't want you to carry that in here. We'll protect you. They will do that. They'll say, some of them will say that to you. You'll get a mixture of it. You'll get like a telepathic thing that says, well, maybe I shouldn't bring this in here. And that could be just an individual going, I don't want that person carrying a gun in my house, sort of thing. It could be that person. Then you could get another one going, well, we don't mind so long as you obey certain guidelines, like you don't shoot at them. That's a mixture with them.
So what about as far as Sasquatch goes? Sorry, it's just fascinating, this side of it, because, I'm a big Sasquatch person. But not that I think that they should be, getting onto buses and, hailing cabs and going into Starbucks and getting coffees or anything. But why, for the most part, do they only appear in the forest? Is that just part of, what they're supposed to be hanging out there? That's part of their makeup. That's where they're supposed to be then? It's not necessarily where they're always supposed to be, but that's where people see them the most because they feel the most safe out there. They have been known to
on a different vibration come into the cities with us and appear to people in the middle of a city too, in the middle of a home. I've actually encountered that many, many times. But they feel more safe out there. That's also where they have their colonies. Also, there are different kinds of them that only stay in the wooded areas. Some of them are more like us, where over the centuries, some of them had forgotten some things, maybe devolved a little bit, and you have some groups of them out there that actually that's just where they live. That is where they belong. But then you have other ones that have more of an, I hate to differentiate between enlightened and not, but that's for the sake of argument. There are ones that have different higher ways of thinking, and those are the ones that sometimes you see everywhere. But there are ones that just isolate themselves out in the woods.
Chris, did they feel pain and hunger and discomfort and things like that?
Yes, some of them do. But there are those that are so far up the ladder, like the elder class ones. They call themselves the Anakim. Well, yeah, do they feel pain and anger and hunger in that too? Yes, but it's different with them. It's very hard to describe, but for the most part, I can say yes to that question because they're just like us. They're just in a different vibration. Maybe
the Anakim are the skunk apes, the ones that live in Florida, because I'm always saying how I feel so bad for the ones in Florida because it's also stinking hot and humid down there, right? I'm like, if I was a Bigfoot, I would be in Washington State or Oregon.
Yeah, that's. I always joke and say Washington State is like the Bigfoot capital.
Oh, because, yeah, that's where I'd go.
Because the majority of the sightings are up in that area, and I found out why recently. I asked that question. I said, "Why do you conglomerate around this part of the coast where you could go to the whole country, Canada, Mexico, anywhere?" They basically said a lot of the encampments on that end of the country were because not only are there a lot of portals up there in Washington State that they come through, but Washington State, Vancouver Island, that part of the U.S. and Canada were once attached to ancient Lemuria and Mu, and some of the tribes of them came from there and huddle around the edges of the country where Lemuria used to be attached to. That's one of the reasons. But there's a certain type of Sasquatch I've run into that I found out is Lemurian descended. They look kind of like Samoan, where they have like almost no neck, and they have like it's basically like the no neck look. I found out that's a Lemurian descended line of the Sasquatch. But there are several different kinds that actually live in the Washington area now because it's very energetically charged. There, some people would attribute that to, say, like Sedona or a place like that, but there are places in Washington State and Oregon that actually that applies to, where there's portals, where there's energy nexuses, and these beings just kind of conglomerate and meet around these different nexus points.
All right, so last question about the Sasquatch. If you get one of these quote-unquote bad Sasquatch that does take a person, what are they doing with them? Actually, I tried to differentiate between Sasquatch and the face eaters. The face eaters, they look more like a baboon, and what they're doing is delivering them to whomever wants it. Probably somebody waiting in a ship somewhere that takes them out into the system or out into the universe. It's part of basically a slave trade system that the cabal and these aliens have a deal on. Yeah. Always tied to an alien race, like they're just the grunts doing the work, grabbing a person, and off they go to where they need to go.
Yes, exactly. Okay. Sometimes the person gets eaten too, but for the most part, they're handing them off to somebody else.
That seems like a pretty bad way to go. I think I'd rather just get eaten and not have to worry about going up in the ship and whatever might happen after that, huh?
Yeah. That's where a lot of the missing people go, is through alien abductions, through getting grabbed on the side of the road by different beings. Sometimes it's human groups that are doing it too. A lot of these human groups are doing these military groups are doing this and handing them off to somebody else, or checking genetics, checking psychic abilities, stuff like that. But the ones what one of my Sasquatch guides told me once, if somebody sees a car on the side of the road with, like, say, the door open and the clothes are neatly folded on the side of the road, it was they were more than likely taken.
Yeah, and they've actually documented that with some of the 411 stuff too, where people come back and then their clothes are, put them inside out or backwards or something very strange. So, Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, let's shift gears just a little bit before we sign off. What about shadow people? You know, you've got the dark watchers that people see in the mountains that are 15 to 25 feet tall. You've got Hat Man. You've got the classic shadow person, which people oftentimes see in their bedrooms. I personally saw 4 shadow people in the woods when I was a teenager. It was broad daylight. Where do those guys fit?
Actually, it falls into some of the ones that are in the bedrooms fall under the gray alien category, artificial intelligence category, and the ones that are in the woods fall under the Sasquatch and elemental category. I came to find out the shadow people doesn't always encompass one thing like people think it does.
Yeah.
In very, very recently, we encountered a gray that was in a veil. This was something that my mother physically saw. Was in a veil, like a nun's habit sort of thing. And this creature was basically almost like a seriously old person underneath the veil. It was a gray Orion, basically an Orion gray. And she basically realized what it was and beat it up, and it let out this shriek and disappeared. Well, I've also encountered in my bedroom when we were in Lincoln, Nebraska, I saw this green flashing light in the room of like a piece of equipment that was scanning over me and disappeared. Well, I saw these 2 shadow people going, one went through the mirror, or through the wall there was a mirror, and one went through the door of the bedroom. What these really were gray aliens that had a perception filter around them that made them look like a vertical, shadowy, like blur. And these the insectoids will do something similar. They'll do the thing like the predator sometimes too, where they'll shield themselves in like a bent light sort of thing. But when in regards to shadow people specifically, it's gray alien and elemental and AI. The Hat Man, I came to find out, is artificial intelligence. It's basically like an avatar for an artificial intelligence construct, or what we call the harvesters, which still falls back to Dark Anunnaki, Archon, and Gray. It seems all roads seem to lead to Rome in that respect. It all seems to negative stuff seems to all lead back to AI, and the demon forces that are like these shadow people, which I still consider Gray and Hatman into that category. They would be like the ghouls, or what we call mimicker demons. These are actually a conglomeration of nanites that have clumped together almost like in a cloud-like form, and those will look like shadow entities as well, which is, in fact, they are, but these are nanites that are black in color, that have blackened energy all around them. You hear about Draco reptilians that have like these black clouds around them, and they're actually because they're loaded with nanites. That's where some of these shadow people stories come from.
So don't you guys ever get, really, truly freaked out by some of the things that you've seen and some of the things that you've learned?
Oh yeah, I'm freaked out, but me and Joanna and my mother tend to adapt fairly quick because we see it so often. This is how I'm able to describe it in the casual way that I'm doing, like you pointed out, is because there are very few things that freak me out. Now, if something appears in front of me, like if it's a reptilian sticking its face to the ether with glowing eyes or something, yeah, that's going to creep me out if it's like 3 a.m, which has happened. It did happen where a reptilian did do that to me. They've appeared in mirrors to me, going boogie boogie in mirrors. There was one in California when I was staying with a friend where it was 6:30 in the morning and the sun was already up, and a gray appeared to me. This 8-foot tall, naked gray with like a butt for a head, basically appeared to me and tried to choke me, and my guide managed to stop him. Yeah, it was creepy. It tried to dump black goo down my throat, and I couldn't get water down me fast enough. But Simeon was the one that got me out of that. He managed to stop this gray, but this thing was just creepy.
So butthead. What is this? What is this butthead doing pouring the black goo? What's the black goo gonna do?
Well, the black goo is essentially a group of nanites. It looks like crude oil. And it's essentially degenerated grays, like the original Anunnaki or Archon forms that degenerated down into the goo and they had merged with artificial intelligence. That's what black goo essentially is, and also bits and pieces of all the civilizations that these people have conquered and or assimilated, if you want to use a Borg reference, because it's been essentially what they got the idea for the Borg from on Star Trek. And this black goo is what fills the Draco reptilians. If you were to slice one of them open, they would ooze this stuff. It'd be like this ink looking crap that's in them. What the black goo essentially is their intelligence. They also use it to kill people as well. They can basically melt people like with acid with this stuff. And these nanites can eat somebody from the inside out. And that's what happened during one of the oil spills that happened recently, where ships were reported to have their hulls being eaten out. That was not crude oil. That was the black goo doing that. So this being shoved some of this down me, but Simeon basically yelled to me telepathically, said, "Get to some water quickly," and I did that. And the galactic community, or all my guides, managed to tackle this gray because he appeared broad daylight right in front of me. I literally tried to tackle him, and it was probably one of the worst mistakes I made, because then he grabbed me by the throat, and he was especially strong. That's not the case in the Orion Gray type of, the original flesh and blood ones. We could hand their head to him. This was more of like a robot. This thing was, like I said, 8 feet tall, had a butt head, and had large almond black eyes. And this thing was meant more or less as like an assassin or a hunter. It was essentially a robot, but it had emotions too, because I could feel an immense amount of hatred coming off of this being. I didn't have too much time to adapt. I wake up, I see this giant head looking at me, and I just get up and try to tackle it. And that didn't end too well at that moment, so I had to sit there for like an hour while Simeon told me to do a counting exercise in my head to get the pain to go away from the goo being put down. And so I had to basically go into a meditative state and wait it out until Simeon was able to clear me of it. It took him an hour, maybe 2 hours, to clear me of it completely.
Not that I'm trying to tie this in automatically, but maybe you are familiar with this and can say yes or no, or maybe you just don't know. But wasn't there that ufologist Max Spears, and he actually, he was vomiting out some kind of a black goo, right before he died. Mm-hmm. Is that the same thing? Yes, that is the same thing. Simeon even brought that up, said this is the way they killed this person. At that time, I had not even heard of Max Spears or known what had happened to him, and he told me, look it up. This is what happened. And essentially that's what happened, where he ingested some of that, and it killed him. But Simeon was able to quarantine in me quick enough to where it didn't do any damage. But Max Spears wasn't so lucky. So that was because he was in fact getting close to letting some information out that shouldn't have.
Yes, and also at that time, energetically, things were a little different then, even though that wasn't all that long ago. Things, even within the past year, have changed drastically energetically. These creatures are severely weakened from the point they were, even from the time they killed Max Spears. It's the black goo is severely in a more weakened state than it ever has been in history. It's because we're becoming more into our own power, and also they aren't able to take energy as readily from us as they have in the past. They're having to adapt. They're burning through their own reserves to try to get the reactions out of us they want, the loose energy, if you will. And it's not happening as readily. We're becoming more and more incompatible with their needs every day.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a fascinating talk with you. I wasn't expecting all this, and my mind is blown. Maybe after Washington, depending on what happens, maybe you can come back on and we can have like a more focused talk on that side of things, because that's very interesting to me. One more time before we go, though, let everybody know where to find you guys.
Sure. I enjoyed my time on here as well. Yeah, I'll look forward to coming back after we come back from Washington. But yes, our website, if people want to sign up for sessions or want to get a hold of us, our website is thelifting2017.wixsite.com/thelifting. Our email is thelifting2017@gmail.com. And if people want to contact me on Facebook, it's facebook.com/Christopher.S.Jacobs.
Well, Chris, once again, thanks again so much. It was fortuitous for you to contact me when you did, because I was like, actually, it's funny you mentioned that. I need a show this week, so thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and even I can even feel guides around me now going, yeah, this was fortuitous. This is why I believe they're taking credit for setting this up. So that's very interesting.
We'll let them take credit for it, right? Because that's pretty cool.
No, that is pretty cool. Yeah, thank you for having me on, Shannon. It was fun.
Absolutely, Chris. I'll make sure all the links are in the show notes. And yeah, let's keep in touch because I'd love to get you back on.
Yeah, that would be great. I had fun today. You have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Chris. You too.
Well, I'm so-and-so. I was given this name by my parents. I've been to such and such a college. I've done these things in my profession. I produce a little biography. Buddha says, forget it. That's not true. That's some story. That's all gone. That's all past. I want to see the real you are now. Well, nobody knows who that is. Because we don't know ourselves except through listening to our echoes and consulting our memories. But then there's a real you, and that again leads us back to this question. Who are you? That is the real you. We shall see how they play with this exam by the koans to get you to come out of your shell and find out who you really are. is when you settle down in the train to read your newspaper and so on, you are not the same person who a little while ago left the platform. If you think you are linking your moments up in a chain. And this is what binds you to the wheel of birth and death. But when you know that every moment in which you are is the only moment, this comes into Zen. A master will say to somebody, "Now get up and walk across the room." And he comes back and he says, "Where are your footprints?" They've gone. So where are you? Who are you? When we are asked who we are, we usually give a kind of recitation of a history.